All right, welcome back to our journey to the tourney. Mark Wise, Kevin Brockway, Larry Vettel with me. Right now we're going to look at our third topic, which is which SEC teams get out of the first weekend and get to the Sweet 16. 5 SEC teams made it, and I tell you what, Larry, a lot of us really thought Alabama should be in, but we can also get the argument why they're not in. It's still amazing, though, that the East had 5 teams in and the West gets nobody in.
Absolutely, and think about this. Alabama won more games against Eastern Division teams than Georgia did.
Yeah.
And yet Georgia got the bid. Yes, they had a better non-conference schedule, but not a whole lot of wins there. But they got in. Good for them. I don't think they're going to be around very long. I'm tempted a little bit with Tennessee and Vandy, but I'm not sold. I think Vandy, Louisville could be a very interesting second-round game. Tennessee can beat anybody. They can also disappear at a moment's notice. So I'm going to take the easy way out. Kentucky, Florida advance, the others go home.
I tell you, Mark, one thing we see about Tennessee, lack of leadership on that team. They just kind of bang around and try to play off their talent.
I just think they're dysfunctional right now. I think the Bruce Pearl suspension, the whole year that they've had, I wouldn't pick them against 4 or 5 teams in the whole tournament. So I don't think they're making. I think the team that is set up well from a scheme standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, is Vanderbilt, because they're going to get a Richmond team that zones. John Jenkins will salivate the minute they start zoning, so that's a big issue. Louisville also zones the entire game. Now they'll press, but they fall back into the zone. So I think Vanderbilt might sneak into the Sweet 16.
Kevin, who do you got from the SEC going forward?
Well, I think Florida will definitely go forward. I think Kentucky. And, you know, I'm tempted with Tennessee again, but like you said, too dysfunctional. But I definitely see Florida and Kentucky being there.
Yeah, I don't think Georgia would have to play Carolina, right? North Carolina, if they got to the second round.
But Georgia doesn't defend.
No.
They're playing Washington, an offensively driven team. That's a bad matchup for Georgia.
Yeah, and I don't like Georgia. I like the team, and I think they're you know, we always say the NCAA is all about matchups. There were some matchups they could have gotten to the Sweet 16. This wasn't one of them.
Yeah, Georgia's had issue containing guards all season long. Isaiah Thomas will lead them up.
Yep, absolutely. We'll see how that all works out. I've got Kentucky and Florida both getting out of it. I'm kind of with you guys on Vandy. I mean, you like them a little bit, but you don't like them a lot. In Tennessee, it could be Bruce Pearl's last game.
The thing with Vandy that I think is a problem against Louisville is the pressure, because they don't have a great handle. And so if they can keep their turnovers down, which they're normally a low turnover team, this will be a great challenge for them to be a low turnover team. If they're low, if they're 10 or 12, they can win that game. I have a feeling they're going to be quite a few higher than that.
All right, we moved to topic 4, which is which team got the worst deal in this whole thing. And we'll start with you, Mark. Certainly, there are a lot of complaining. Jay Billis, who I love, he was unbelievable on the show, wondering if the committee members knew the ball was around. But what teams? Who do you think got the worst deal in this whole thing?
In terms of not getting in?
Not getting in, or getting in and getting a bad draw.
Well, I think Ohio State got the worst draw. As the #1 seed, you cannot have the toughest region. And I think that they got that. And part of the reason they got that is because Kentucky's underseeded. They're the 4 seed in that region. I think, again, who did you play? Colorado, non-conference strength of schedule, 325. The committee has shown us repeatedly they will punish you if you do not play people out of conference. But I think they did enough to overcome that. 4 top 25 wins. I thought Colorado should have been in. UAB, VCU, either one, get them out of there. I mean, UAB had no wins against the top 25. I just didn't get that at all. Virginia Tech, hey, what would a bubble be without Seth?
I know. He's got the NIT on speed dial.
And they're the quintessential team of how far can one great win get you?
Right.
Because that's all they had.
Yeah.
And we know the answer.
Yeah.
It gets you a #1
Right
seed
NIT.
in the
Yeah,
NIT
exactly.
every
I
year.
wasn't sold on FSU, Kevin, even being a lock as much as they were, because they were similar. They had the one great win, and but it was like, well, they finished 3rd in the ACC. You got to let them in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Kentucky, I'm going to say Kentucky got the rawest deal, just in terms of getting the 4 seed and having to play Ohio State in the Sweet 16. You know, beating Florida twice head-to-head, I thought they were going to be a little bit higher, maybe a 3, or, you know, even Cat fans were talking about possibly 2. But again, like you said, Gene Smith probably already had his mind made up Sunday morning, had his coffee, had the bracket all the way out, because obviously Kentucky fans are pretty upset with where they're seated right now.
Well, they're upset about everything. They're always upset. You know, I mean, they don't understand why any of their players ever misses a shot, Larry. I mean, but I kind of agree on Kentucky. What about you? Who do you think got the worst deal of anybody?
John Pelfrey. He got the worst deal. He's got a team with a lot of guys coming back, a top 5 recruiting class, and an AD who fired him so he could look good by having a much improved Arkansas team in year 1. See, we got our guy, and now we're going to be a whole lot better. Arkansas is going to be 3 games better in the SEC and 5 to 8 games better overall, regardless if one of us was coaching them next year. They're going to be a lot better. And so, yeah, I think John got a raw deal. As far as the tournament, UAB, because they're going to have to spend the rest of their lives explaining what photos they have of what members of the committee. That is the most mind-boggling this at-large selection that I can think of in many years. I cannot, for the life, I've tried to figure it out. There's no way on earth, unless they just needed a school with Birmingham in its name.
Sometimes it's not always the glamour teams that get a bad deal too. Like, I think Oakland could beat a lot of teams in the tournament, but they got Texas, the deepest team, the team that can defend on the perimeter. I really, that was a tough draw for Oakland.
You know, the team that I think got I agree with the Kentucky part of it, because as low, they're underseeded, and you look at who's in there. There's a lot of good teams. But to me, Harvard was 32nd in RPI. Now, I've never seen them play, which is part of the reason they didn't get in, right? Because nobody's seen them play. There can't be an eye test if nobody's looking at you. Right. But I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I think the RPI almost is RIP now. Yes. Because that doesn't work. You look at all these other things with RPI, and it's almost like it was a tool. We just decided to leave it in the shed.
Well, don't tell that to Alabama, though, because they beat Georgia head-to-head twice and still didn't get in the tournament.
But they didn't get in because they're non-conference, Larry. I mean,
right. They had no wins at all that they could point to and say, well, not that one, but well, we played that team. They were pretty good. Yeah, their non-conference was hideous, and I understand why they didn't get in. Felt bad for Anthony. It's hard to imagine. I'm not surprised they didn't, that Georgia did. I mean, I kept seeing Georgia's RPI in the 30s, and I kept wondering why. Why? What in there? Yes, they played some good teams, but they didn't beat any. What did Georgia Tech they beat?
But they beat Colorado, and they beat UAB. They had bubble wins. Yeah. You know, in Bubble Town, they survived there.
Yeah, that's, well, I mean.
They played a bracket buster in November, basically, is what you're saying.
And VCU, don't forget, VCU went to Wichita State on bracket buster, literally bracket buster Saturday, and won. Remember, who did you play? Who did you beat? Where did you beat them? Right. That's a huge road win.
That's the message Mike Slive gave to the SEC coaches a couple of years ago in Destin. It said, look, I've been on the committee. I can tell you, here's what you better do. And some did it, and some, like Rick Stansbury, just refused to do it. I like Elon College. But he, you know, and I think in Anthony's case, they did schedule a little tougher than what they ended up playing. But when they lost down at Puerto Rico, now all of a sudden they're playing 3 bad teams instead of 2 good ones.
Yeah, you can argue that Jermichael Green's suspension may have cost them an NCAA tournament bid, because if he plays in some of those games, maybe they win a few.
But that's topic 4. We will come back. Make sure you click on the next video here on Gatorsports.com for our final topics. We're going to tell you who's going to win this whole thing here on the journey to the tourney.